Welcome aboard, guys. This is 3D Comic Creator. My name is John. This is a video for DAZ Studio users who want to make their work look like a comic. Now, I was supposed to come out with this ebook years ago, but I didn't. Kind of like that old Seinfeld joke, yada yada yada, and then I didn't. But anyway, I moved a lot of my work over to Blender, and I was looking back over this, and I noticed that there's a lot more shaders and other methods for comic stuff for DAZ Studio that wasn't there kind of when I was doing it. So I don't even know if these methods are obsolete, but I thought instead of coming out with the ebook, instead of trying to wring money out of people, I was just going to go ahead and try to put this out there and see if maybe people could get some use out of it. So with that said, what I'm going to do is go over what I call the sharp diffuse method. Before I did something called the ambient method. It was a little bit involved. This way you'll see is a bit faster and not quite as complex. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first things first, make sure that you are in the 3D Light rendering engine. You don't want to be in Iray. 3D Light is going to be what we need to make things look like a comic. So I'm using a stock standard Genesis. That's version 1 Genesis. Basic male figure. Everybody should have this. So you should be able to follow along. I don't have any props or anything that I bought. So what we need to do is change this guy's shaders from the human surface to the Uber surface shader, which should be included in your copy of DAZ. So what we're going to do is make sure Genesis is selected over here in the scene. Then Genesis, or every surface you want to change, needs to be selected, so I'll just choose Genesis. Then what we got to do is find that shader. What I did is I kind of put it in my categories, but you can just do a search for Uber shader. And again, with the object in the scene and the surfaces selected, then you can go ahead and double click Uber surface. You'll see up here everything is now changed to Uber surface. Okay, so then we got to change all the settings that are common to every surface. So while I've got these all selected, I'm going to go down. I'm going to change the diffuse roughness down to 0. Next, I'm going to go to the specular. That's going to kick all the way up. Glossiness is going to kick down to 0. Specular sharpness all the way up to 100. Okay, so those are my common settings. Then I'm going to turn off a bunch of things now, which is kind of the beauty of the Uber surface shader, is that I can turn those channels completely off, whereas with the DAZ default shader, you can really only turn them down, and then they still affect the model. But in this case, let's start with bump. Let's turn that off. We can use some of the bump stuff later. Just for now, we're going to turn it off. Alright, specular we need. Specular 2 off. But that can be useful later. That can put kind of a third tone into your artwork. But we won't play around with it for now. Alright, ambient off. Reflections already off. So, let's see, for now, we'll get rid of that. Velvet. So we're turning off all the things that are trying to make your model look real. Okay. Because we don't need that. That's going to get in the way of us making a comic. Alright. So all that stuff is off. Then, what I've done here is I've made surface selection sets to make it easy for me to choose just the face, the head, the bodysuit. And the way you do that is over here in the flyout menu. Scroll down, edit surface selection sets. See, I've made these already. If I needed a new one, I would add this. But I click on face. These are assigned to this set. These two are assigned to this one. All this stuff is assigned to this bodysuit. So I can quickly grab those surfaces that have common settings. Alright, so actually I might start with the bodysuit here. What I'm going to do is change the color to black. Alright, that's not looking good, but we're going to keep going here. And let's change my specular. Actually, my specular might be fine like that. what I'm going to do is remove whatever texture is there, which is always my base recommendation, especially those diffuse textures. Just get rid of those right away, because mostly those diffuse textures are made to help you make things look real and kind of put fake light modeling on things so that it looks like it has a depth and texture. So that is going to get in our way, so we get rid of it. Anyway, alright, so then I have my bodysuit pretty much done. And what I'm going to do next, let's just take a render and see how that looks. Alright, that's pretty flat there. That's what we want. Because if you look at a comic, you've got the penciler, you've got an inker, then you've got the colorist who's going to come along, start with flat colors. They're going to build up from there. They're going to try to model the figure, make it look like it has depth. We're going to do that with light. Let's close out of this. So, let's go back. I'm going to add in some lights. I have some standard lights that I made. Now these are going to be distant lights. We need those parallel rays. We don't need spots or anything like that. These are kind of harsh lights that are going to give us just some kind of stark contrast. In the settings for these, I went and let me look at my light here. Okay, so this one is 200. This is the one that's giving me kind of a back rim light around this character. This one set to 70%. It's kind of just a fill light. Now let's see what our render looks like. You can see we got some really stark contrast here. That's what we want. I mean, you want to start with that, and then you can start modifying from there. You can see how quick that is to make that happen. Okay, you could also play around with shadows. That really makes your image dynamic when you start throwing shadows. However, you got to consider that it's going to make your render times a lot longer. So be careful along that line. I'm going to grab my camera. I believe I memorized a position I wanted for this here. Another thing I recommend is memorizing. When you get something the way you want, memorize it. And okay, yeah, so I just restored a memorized position for my camera. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the bodysuit part, with the head and the neck. So I got to select Genesis again. I'm going to go to the face. Let's get rid of this texture. It's looking blue. I'm going to change it to this color I saved. Still looking blue because of my specular color. Let's get rid of this map that's in here. We don't want this map controlling our spec. Only our lights are going to do that. Alright, so let's also go back and change that to that color. Okay, so that looks pretty much right. Let's do a render. I mean, I can't say it looks great, but it looks like what I wanted. I got flat colors, and I got clear delineation between the colors. If you notice something, I don't have any eyebrows on this character. One thing I like to do to get some eyebrows in there, I had to actually go back to the texture, put a flat color in, and then I was able to make a texture that has eyebrows. Let me grab that. Here it is here. And you can see what that looks like. It's nothing more than that. He's looking really red right now because I have this pink color in here. I'm going to change that to white. Then I'll render it. Okay, we're back to where we were. So, unfortunately, I can't just add in a color here now into the head part, in the neck, because no matter how close you get, there's still going to be a seam because you've got an image from Photoshop or something, and you've got Daz making a color. So there's always going to be some mismatch. So what I had to do, let's get rid of this. I'm going to browse. I just made a solid block of color. And I'm going to go down to my specular, get rid of this. Let's grab that same color. Now we should be matching up. Okay, so we're looking good there. Now basically, again, that's really all there is to it. There's a few things you can do to kind of punch things up so what you can do is go back to your bump, and your bump map has to be really sharply contrasted. Normally, if you look at your default bump maps you might get with a model, they're going to be grayscale images. Like, you can't do that because that's just going to muddy up your colors. So you need something that's just solid. It's got to be black and white, man. You got to really punch it up. So I'm going to put in, I think, I'll start with the face here. So let's go to the bump. Let's get rid of this guy. We don't want him. I'm going to turn bump on. So let's choose my map. I'm going to use this crosshatch that I made in Photoshop. So you can see what that looks like. That's going to give us just a little bit of bump. Actually, what you've got to do, I'm going to leave it at 100. Let's just render it. All right, that's too much, but you have to chase this with every panel. Every time you get farther away, you're going to have to increase it. When you get closer, you're going to have to decrease it so it doesn't overpower your color. So there's not a one-size-fits-all situation. I'm going to take this down to 20%. Let's just see how it looks. Okay, it looks like I'm getting a little bit of tooth here in the color, as if someone either using a brush or something, and it doesn't look quite so harsh. And I'm going to do the same thing with the bodysuit, but this time I'm going to use my horizontal lines. It's just another basic texture. You can see that's all it is some black and white lines. Let's see what we get. Yeah, see, that's way too much. We need to suggest it. I'm going to take it down probably 50%. Yeah, see, we're looking like we got some tooth there, like there's some hand strokes. You know, it's kind of a kludge, but it does work. Let me just take it down to 25. And let's see what we get there. Yeah, you know, a lot more subtle than it was before. And again, this is only going to work at this magnification. If I zoom in, I'm going to have to decrease it. If I zoom out, I'm going to have to increase it if I want that to be seen. So, I mean, get used to that. The displacement, I don't mess with too much because, again, displacement changes the actual mesh. It distorts it. I don't want to have to deal with that. So only as a last resort will I deal with displace. I stick with bump instead. And really, guys, that's pretty much it. That's the basics of it. So what we're trying to do is emulate the procedure of these comic pros. You know, we start with a white sheet. We start with, you know, pencil essentially and pen, and then we're coming in with some flat color. And the lights themselves, the lights are what is determining the modeling of this character. You know, I can take this guy and move him around and see what I get. And you can see I'm getting these flat renders that really go fairly quickly. And what I'm going to do, I mean, I'll show you a couple of examples that I did. I actually made a comic few years ago that I did not finish. I'm going to give you guys a link so you can download it. I made it entirely using this method, and what you'll see is that you can really make a lot of things happen using this. It's very quick, and like I said, I did move a lot of things into Blender from now, but this method might be useful for somebody. I know there's other shaders, I know there's other methods, especially since I first started doing this stuff. But I'm going to put that out there anyway. If anybody has any questions, anybody has any comments for me, I'm glad to help. I'm happy to answer any questions you got. So what I'm going to do is come out with even more stuff and probably try to finish out the rest of the book that I was supposed to write. I had all the chapters done. I just never really wrote it up completely. So hopefully this helps out. Let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time.